Welcome back, Worksaholics. Appreciate your attendance. This is week 4 of the Take 10 listing coaching relationship. That means that we're exactly halfway through our coaching relationship. So if you're a week 4 attendee, it should be because you've completed all of your assignments. And if you are in week 4, last week you were busy finding 5 season expired families, and you were instructed to go ahead and prospect those families, real world, rubber meets the road, 5 season expired listings that you could reach out to via handwritten note or letter, that you could reach out to via telephone, leave a voicemail if you don't catch them live. You're empowered to go over there and knock on their door. If you feel a sense of passion and conviction, you could look somebody in the eye and say, hey, there's a reason that your house could sell this time around. It didn't sell last summer. It didn't sell last spring, but I'm here to tell you that we can sell it for you this summer coming up, right? And I encourage you to come back because today's session, week 4, and then moving into the listing presentation skills that we've developed and also gleaned or modeled. We have modeled our listing presentation skills that we're going to share with you from some of the absolute iconic listing agents in North America. You know, becoming a listing agent is not easy. I hate to break this to you, but it might be easy to get a friend or a family member or a neighbor to list their home with you. But if you want to build a large listing inventory, if you want to make a physician's income, if you want to make a attorney's wage, you have to create a large listing inventory, and that takes work. It's work that is it's difficult. There's rejection, there's objections, there's problems that have to be solved, there's egos that have to be overcome. There is a legitimate mental chess that you need to learn how to play if you're going to be a high volume listing agent. And I want to reflect back on a conversation where I had with a Remax agent many years ago who was making about 80 grand a year. And he said, you're full of baloney. He said, you're full of baloney, Russ. I don't need a listing presentation. I don't need objection handling technique. I don't need to go out and role play different scenarios. I don't need to do all those things. I list almost every listing I ever go on. I list just because of my marvelous personality. And I say, well, that's fantastic if you want to be an $80,000 a year real estate agent. That's fantastic. But if you want to be a $400,000 a year real estate agent, if you want to take 70 to 90 listings a year or more, then you need to sharpen your saw. You need to have the sharpest axe to cut down that many trees. You need to cultivate a skill set to develop your own professional, quantified best practices, and you need to be looking to improve them every single day. You know, that would be the equivalent of you saying, hey, I don't need to, hit the driving range 60 hours a week to be a golfer. No, you don't. You can go out and hack and slice and hook your drives, and you can miss the green by 80 feet. You can putt the ball 70 feet past the hole on a downhill slope because you're not a good golfer. So that would be a great analogy. If you were a fisherman, you can go out and dunk a lure in the ground, in the water. But if you want to be a tournament level fishing pro, then every single thing matters, from the lunar cycle to the tides to the temperatures to the color of your lure to the leader that you're using to the sharpness of the hooks and the barb on the hook. Every single thing matters to a tournament fisherman. every single thing matters to a professional golfer, and every single thing matters to a professional listing agent. So this argument from these low end emerging realtors that say they don't need a real estate listing presentation, they don't need unique selling propositions, they don't need to know objection handling techniques, they don't need to have a skill to create a sense of urgency, or to have a particular telephone script, or to have a CRM, or to have post closing follow up. It's because they're not aspiring to anything great. They're aspiring to mediocrity. And I said in the first week, mediocre people don't like to be around top producers. And top producers don't like to be around mediocre people. So Take 10 Listings is only built to coach you up if you want to get out and take, 3, 4, 5, 6 listings a month or more. So we're at the point now, at the halfway point, that we're handing over the baton of responsibility. If you've ever seen a track meet where a relay race takes place, the exchange of the baton is a pivotal point in every race. So passing the baton of responsibility to you is different than you relying on a coach to do something for you, right? It's actually a completely personal experience that you look yourself in the eye and you say, if it is to be, it is up to me. It's not my broker's fault. It's not my dad's fault. It's not my coach's fault. It's 100% my responsibility. So we're getting to the point now where we're passing that baton of responsibility. And I will vouch for raising now, putting maybe 5 children through college, and living a pretty exceptional life in my humble perspective, a very exceptional life, that listings in residential real estate is the quickest and most efficient path, because of all of these eventualities that come out of a listing that don't ever come out of a buyer. So let's take 10 listings and upgrade your skills and manage your tasks. And let's assert some coaching on you now. Let's go ahead and do this with a script. I used a program called SlyDial, and I would leave sometimes 100 voicemails a day on expired listings, telephone voicemails, whether it be their cell phone voicemail or their home phone voicemail. And my personal assistant at the time, she evolved and became the chief operating officer of AnnieMac Works today. But at the time, she was my personal assistant, and she was charged with the responsibility to deploy voicemails to these home phones and cell phones throughout the community that I serve. Now, listen carefully. I would use a software package called SlyDial, and I would leave this voicemail on seasoned expired listings. And then if she was mad at me, and this is not a joke, she would turn up the volume, meaning she would turn up from, say, 60 voicemails a day to 160 voicemails a day. And whenever she would leave 160 voicemails in one day instead of 60, I would get like 50 inbound calls back to me. Okay. And that was her way of punishing me for doing something wrong. Whether I was too mouthy or did something, she would just overload me with inbound calls. But on a traditional day, 60 voicemails would result in maybe 6 to 10 inbound calls back to my phone. So you just got a clue. Success does leave clues, and I just left you a pretty big jewel sitting there in front of you. Are you going to pick it up and run with it with this voicemail script, or are you going to say, season expires aren't for me? Hey, my name's Russ. I was one of the agents that tried to sell your house this past summer. Remember, you were on the market with Coldwell Banker Real Estate? I ended up selling another home around the corner from you, so sorry it didn't work out. But the reason I'm calling is that this spring leading into the summer months, is actually the hottest time to sell your house. The kids are going to be out of school soon. And my goodness, the interest rates are still incredibly low. And because they're so low, there's really an attractive reason that people want to buy now this spring and this summer. And it's actually converts to attractive for you too, because it means the house you go buy is going to be cheaper as well. Can I ask you, if the price were right, I mean really right, would you consider making a move this summer, maybe between now and say August? Would you consider it? And if you could let me know your dream destination, your perfect scenario, I mean, if you had a magic wand, where would you spend the next chapter of your life? I would love to get working on this for you as well. And I don't care if it's out of state or out of the country, as long as I know your dream destination, your perfect scenario, I can go to work. I have a national network of real estate agents that I can reach out to get information for you, and I can serve you as a concierge and liaison for your upcoming move. I want to coordinate the whole thing for you. Your house may be worth more than you think. Call me back if you get this message and you want to talk. Now, I just heard everybody on the line say, is this guy full of baloney? Did he say all that on a voicemail? What a jerk. If somebody left me that long voicemail, I would think he was an insane person. And I'm going to tell you, many, many years, I made over 100,000 a month in real estate. Many, many months in a row, I cashed checks for over $100,000 a month. And why I'm telling you this is, if you do the same thing that every other low life $2 million a year realtor's doing, you're going to get the same thing that every low life $2 million a year realtor gets. I left messages that were between 180 seconds and sometimes as long as 3 minutes. And these voicemails were deployed by Slide Dial. And I did this to the season expired and expired listings in my marketplace, and I expanded that marketplace to increase my volume. The lesson here is whether you get somebody live on the phone. So let's say we're live on the phone. Hey, Mr. Smith, my name is Russ Fitzpatrick. Hey, I was one of the agents that tried to sell your house this past summer when you were on the market with Century 21. Yeah, I ended up selling that family another home, so I'm sorry it didn't work out. But the reason I'm calling is that this spring, oh, let me give you my phone number just in case we ever get to, you're having a conversation, but you're following this same agenda, okay? Market timing, price were right, I mean really right, dream destination, what is your perfect scenario, and ending with your house may be worth more than you think. Your call to action can be given in a voicemail, and please do not be shy about a 3-minute voicemail. They will listen to it if they're interested, and if they're not interested, they wouldn't have listened no matter what. Think about that. You roll up on your voicemail on your cell phone, and some realtor's babbling on for 3 minutes. You're not going to listen to it if you're not interested, but if you are interested, you're going to listen to it. So your job as a realtor is to find people who are interested. So whether you use Slide Dial or you use text, the big lesson here for you as a realtor is you could use this same agenda in text. Hi, Mr. Smith. I was one of the realtors tried to sell your house last month, last quarter, last summer, last spring. Um, can I ask you, if the price were right, would you consider selling between now and August? Oh, you never ask yes or no questions on a voicemail. Oh, you never ask yes or no questions in a sales scenario. I'm calling bullshit on that. I ask yes or no questions all the time. And you know what? Ask enough people yes or no questions, you're going to make a lot of money. But you have this unclear strategy that you've put in place where you have some sales trainer teaching you some way of being, and then you don't make any calls because you're paralyzed by, you know, wanting it to be right instead of wanting it to be perfect, instead of just doing work. Just talk to people, be yourself, ask thoughtful questions. Could you leave this message on a voicemail? Yes. Could you follow this agenda on a text? Absolutely. Could you reach out to a person on Facebook and start this same conversation? And if you're attractive and articulate and have some charisma, could you get on a video camera and say this to a person and then send that video by BombBomb or by CoVideo? Look them up, BombBomb or CoVideo. A lot of top realtors use BombBomb. So, you know, I don't think there's any one script or agenda that solves all your problems, but this was basically my sincere way of reaching out to a family. And I reached out to a lot of families, and that's what today is about. Okay. Source of Business Charting is about creating a path, creating a roadmap for you to follow for your business to thrive. And I'm going to look all the way back to a Source of Business chart that I built in 1994, 1995, when I was a lowly $2 million a year realtor. You know, my big goal was to do $2 million in 1 year and make $60,000 in commissions. If you look along the bottom of my Source of Business chart, uh, personal referrals, my farm area, for sale by owners, expireds, company referrals, and other sources of business. You could see in 1994, I was building a little bit of personal referral momentum and my farm area was humming. I was decent at converting for sale by owners, only 3 for the whole year. Is that a big deal? I only did 2 expireds and then a couple of company referrals and on to other sources. Um, in 1997, I considered it my breakthrough calendar year because I was going to forge this path towards 1997 being almost $150,000 in commissions. But it was this Source of Business chart, this fire and police department work that I was going to do, the farming with door hangers and letters, the personal referral business was tracked, the company referral business was tracked, sign and ad calls, for sale by owners, expireds, whatever the sources of business that I was working. Well, I'm going to encourage you today to use a Source of Business chart that can help manage your expectations. Because one of the great challenges of being a real estate agent is there's no par. You're standing up in the tee box and you don't know if it's supposed to take 6 shots or 4 shots. You don't know if you're supposed to get 7 for sale by owners listed this year or 12. And then you feel bad because you only listed 4. Or you start working season expireds and you think you're supposed to get a listing a month. But what if you're not supposed to get a listing a month? What if that's wrong? What if you set the wrong expectation? Then you're debilitatingly depressed and you're debilitatingly disappointed in yourself. And that leads to avoiding that activity. But what if you set a more reasonable expectation? And what if you set a self professed projection? So you set something firm that said, look, I'm going to take 1 season expired per quarter, not per month. And what if your Source of Business chart allowed you to balance your income expectations versus your expense expectations so that it really did set a reasonable expectation with some projections and you knew what you were going to spend versus what you're going to make. So I'm going to give you an example from your week 3 assignment. And this is just one tiny, tiny, tiny source of business within a pool, a deep pool of sources that you can choose from. But what if you did just do 5 seasoned expired listings each week? So let's pretend that you finished your assignment from last week, which I know, based on my experiences in human behavior, less than 5 or 10% of the people will actually complete any assignment because there's no impending doom. You don't have any impending doom. You don't have an F on your report card that your parents have to see, so you don't have to do it. You don't have a direct correlation between your lack of income and your lack of doing the assignment. So in your mind, you think, I don't have to do it. Well, what if you did do it? What if you did correlate the work and the assignment to the income? I promise you that correlation could define your career. The correlation between the work that you do and the income that you make is the toughest correlation to make, because I sent out 5 this week and I didn't get any income. I sent out 5 this week, I didn't get any income. I sent out 5 again, I didn't get any income. So it's very difficult in the real estate business to emotionally and intellectually correlate the labor that you're doing to the income that you're earning, because it's so far between. You have to do work in January to receive income in August. Isn't that ridiculous? But that's what makes the real estate business so easy. Because if you just manage your tasks instead of your results, you will be a high earner. But if you did 5 season expired listings per week and you took 12 weeks off a year, you would have taken 200 season expired conversations in a 40-week period of time. Well, if you did your letter, you did your voicemail, you did your email, you did your Facebook reach out, you're going to get about 10% of those people to respond in some way or another. You ever hear the term the numbers game? Well, this is a perfect analysis of the numbers game within the season expired marketplace. So 5 season expired listings per week, 200 season expireds over a 40-week period of time, results in 10% of the people having meaningful dialogue. That means we've actually conversed in great detail about their situation, but only 8 of those deep dive conversations resulted in a listing appointment, and only half of the listing appointments that I went on did I actually list. So that was 4 listings by putting 60 minutes per week into 5 season expireds. Now, you may be bored to tears and you may be thinking this is the most asinine, redundant, basic, you know, teaching a caterpillar how to move each foot at the same time so that he can actually walk. But I think it's complex. I think that it's the stuff that your career structure and direction and accountability can be made of. So at the end of any week, you don't say to yourself, how many listings did I take? You don't say, how many uh, commission checks did I cash? Instead, you say, I did my 60 minutes of work, or I didn't do my 60 minutes of work. And if I did my 60 minutes worth of work, I managed the tasks, not the results, then I am profoundly more successful than people that manage their results. Now, I set a very low expectation, about 20 conversations to be had, about 8 listing appointments to go on for the whole calendar year, and only taking 4 listings. I can tell you from personal experience, your uh, your results will be greater than that. But we set an expectation, whether we're dealing in in a source of business like season expireds, or if we're dealing in buy owners. We're dealing with setting a very, very underwhelming result. 3 houses from 4 proven sources of business would be 12 houses sold. That's a significant achievement. As we build this layer cake of friends and family, absentee owners, your niche farm area, your season expireds, your bold leads, and your FSBOs, it's not that any one source of your business is the extraordinary result. It's that your diversified portfolio of multiple sources of business is the way that you manage your career. So, one last little tangent or soapbox I'm going to go off is, having watched residential real estate agents for 32 years, I see these entrepreneurial seizures. I see realtors that get really excited about something for a few weeks, and they have these entrepreneurial seizures and they look absolutely ridiculous. They say, like, oh, this is the one thing that I needed my whole career, and this is going to be the one thing that makes my whole career different. Well, that's not how it really works. How it really works is you have 6 or 7 sources of business that have underwhelming results each. That no one source of business defines you. Instead, you have several sources of business that propel your income into the high 6 figures. So you might only do 4 deals from your friends and family. You might only do 3 deals from your absentee owners. You might only do 3 or 4 deals this year from your season expires. But when you add them all up, It's an absolutely incredible year. And I'm going to use a very, very toned down formula today to show you exactly what I mean. So everybody has in their human existence a sphere of influence, a group of people that they have some trust and camaraderie with. So if you managed a proactive database, and I'm talking about Excel, man, you don't have to go out and buy Top Producer on your first month in the business. I'm just talking about go to Bill Gates, get some Microsoft Excel, and put all your friends in the Excel. Kind of like a good old fashioned Christmas list. Anybody that's in your family, whether they're local or nearby in the region, any of the coworkers that you used to work with at your old job, or that you've worked with in the past, or maybe you still work a part-time job, your alumni from your high school or college, your neighbors, people that you pass down the street every day that see you and know you and see you working with your kids and coaching soccer teams or volunteering at the PTA, any acquaintances that you've come across in the past 6 or 7 years. Very important piece of your database is your vendors, people that you go get your hair cut with, restaurant owners that you frequent their restaurant. If you are in the PTA or any other club, any shop owners that you frequent, any sports contacts, your kids' soccer coach or baseball coach, or the parents on those teams. Do you think that if you compiled a database of, say, somewhere between 100 and 200 people, or maybe it was bigger than that, that you could sell 3 houses this year to those people if you were proactive in marketing to them? And I'm using the absolutely, you know, middle America, Keokuk, Iowa, cheapest houses in the planet. 3 houses at 133,000 each brings you $4,000 per house. This is low income, low price point. Okay, some of you are really scoffing at me here. You're saying I wouldn't even get out of bed for that, right? But because you live in, you know, New York, New Jersey, Los Angeles, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, DC, Baltimore, you couldn't live on that. But if you lived in an area where the average house was 133 and it was $4,000 per commission, this would be an adequate plan. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter what your numbers are. As long as you put 3 at 300,000 is $9,000, you're still using the same formula. You understand? But in this formula, we're talking about 1 hour each week that you spend marketing to your personal sphere of influence database. And you're going to use channels like Facebook. You're going to use channels like direct mail. You use channels like postcards, slide dial voicemails to your friends and family, creating a text network where you could send one text to all your friends. Hey, just bragging. I sold a house for 245 the other day, closed with no problem. Call me if you ever need help. That's a text. We're not thinking it to death. We just sent a text to our friends and family. Hey, to all my friends, having a great season this year, selling lots of houses. Call me if you need to buy or sell a house. Oh my God, we just solved your problem. You're proactively marketing to your friends, family, coworkers through postcards, texts, emails, social media posts, and you're spending 1 hour each week in a time block to do that. You've got a geographic farm now. You find 6 to 1,200 homes for your first farm. I used to deliver door hangers by myself because it was free when I was broke. I would physically go out and walk the neighborhood and deliver newsletters. I would mail postcards very, very infrequently. Number one, because they don't work that well. And number two, because they weren't free. So I would have more success delivering door hangers and newsletters. If I was wealthy and I could send out 2 postcards a month and that they were those great big 8.5 by 11 glossy postcards, I would probably do that today if I had enough money to do that. A couple times a year, I want to send a personal letter. A couple times a year, I want to do a survey call. Hey, Mr. Smith, my name is Russ Fitzpatrick from ABC Real Estate. We're conducting our annual end of the year survey this year as we enter, February of 2019, as we're entering the summer of 2020. We reach out to the community every year just to ask a couple quick questions. Do you mind participating in our survey? Do you have any plans of moving in the next year? How about the next 1 to 3 years? If you were going to move today, where would you move to? And do you have any idea how much your house is worth? 4 survey questions. Would you like to know how much your house is worth? Is the follow-up question. Do you have any idea how much your house is worth? And just write down their answers. And when you keep a survey of where they would think about moving and how much they think their house is worth, you hold that data, because when they come around and you're talking to them, you say, remember when I talked to you back in June of 19? You said your house was worth like 425. Turns out it was worth almost 500,000. And today it's worth 555. Emails are free. Deploying emails, social media contacts, website relationship is free. Do you think you could sell 3 of those houses at the end of a calendar year? And remember, we're toned it down for 3 133s, $4,000 a house in your geographic farm area. But would it be worth to spend 2 hours each week on your geographic farm and to hold yourself accountable to 11 to noon every Tuesday? 11 to 1 every Thursday, so that you are proactively marketing to your farm each week? Now, we talk about buyer side transactions from the Facebook marketplace. We talk about a free place to post Craigslist ads. If you don't have any listings, you can post HUD.gov properties. You can post auction.com properties. You're allowed to post new construction, guys. If you don't have any listing inventory, post new construction in Craigslist. Post on the Facebook marketplace. Sit open houses. If you don't have any listings, sit open houses at somebody else's open house. But for God's sake, sit open houses. I did probably 60 open houses a year. Ask a listing agent or a FSBO if you could sit an open house. And if you sell it that day, will they pay you a commission? Just do anything rather than do nothing. Sit open houses at HUD homes. Sit open houses for a small builder. Load your listing inventory, load your HUD.gov properties, load your new construction properties, and load your post-auction.com properties into your MyWorks Suite account. If you did that, do you think you could sell 3 houses at the end of a calendar year? Okay, so 3 at 133, $4,000 a piece. You're talking about a couple hours each week marketing yourself to buyers. And if you use Facebook Marketplace, if you use Craigslist, if you sit open houses, you can actually stack all of your buyer activity work during your open house. I want to say something that's not revolutionary, but very commonsensical to me. I'm sitting in open house anyway. Why don't I make my Craigslist posts that day while I'm sitting at the open house? Why don't I make my Facebook Marketplace posts? If you do use Boomtown Leads or Conversion or Commissions Inc., and you have some other pay-per-click budget that you want to deploy, great. Do your pay-per-click work during the 3 hours each week that you're sitting at your open house. Then you're stacking the activity. Now, the fastest path to listing inventory and the fastest path to income, in my estimation, is warm human connections. And we're using 2 sources of business in this example: seasoned expireds, which we just rehearsed during the coaching relationship last week, and for sale by owners, which we're going to be touching on. You know, if you're going to make a warm human touch with a person, you could walk up and just do it eyeball to eyeball, or you could use multiple channels. And my recommendation is to use as many channels as you can to bridge the gap to make the warmest human touch. So, Facebook friend, LinkedIn affiliation, finding an email address for the consumer, texting the consumer, dropping off a package or a note, and dare we even suggest that you would drive over to their house and knock on the door and say hi? Is that so beneath you? Is that so old school and so just terrifying to do? Or is it reasonable that you might drive over and say hi? Is it reasonable that you would text a note? Hey, Bob, I saw you still hadn't sold your house. If you're considering selling your house, I want you to start to think of your real estate marketplace like Mayberry MFD with old Andy Griffith and Barney Fife. And just think of it as a small town. And just think of it as you being a friendly person in that small town. And don't go over with this ridiculous expectation that you're going to list their house that day. Instead, go over with the realistic expectation that you're trying to make a warm human contact and you're trying to serve them and you're trying to help them. So you drive over and say, hi, hey, I don't know if you know, this season's supposed to be really busy. You were on the market last year, didn't sell. Hey, I know you're trying to sell it by owner. Have you ever thought about what could happen if we get it listed? Dare I even suggest that you should make a telephone call for a very specific reason to one of those families? And if you did that for a couple hours each week, do you think that you could sell an extra 3 homes? Now, remember I used this very, very toned down version of a source of business chart to make a point. And the point that I hope that I'm making is that it doesn't take an extraordinary result from any source of business. That in this low income market of $133,000 houses, this totals $60,000 a year in commissions. That's not bad in a market where the average home sale is $133,000. Now you take that up to an average home sale of $9,000, $300,000 houses times 3 per source of business times 5 sources of business. You're talking about your first $135,000 a year. This is the formula to spend 1 hour set aside per week for your sphere of influence marketing, to set aside a couple hours to do an open house and to do some buyer side transaction promotions, to consistently week after week push the snowball, build the snowball up in 2 hours each week in your geographic farm area, and then a combined 4 hours of prospecting per week. This is a very, very manageable schedule. So that let's say that you set aside 90 minutes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to get to your 4 hours. Let's say that you set aside 2 hours on Sunday to prospect and 2 hours on Friday night to prospect. I love prospecting on Friday night between 7 and 9 p.m. It's the best time for me to prospect. I also love prospecting after 10 a.m. on Sundays. There's a good chance that people are home and I can reach a lot of people. So there's some success in there that leaves clues, but this is the plan. And guys, if you don't have an appetite for 10 hours a week of work, you are never going to be successful. This is the most benign, I would say, basic manageable chart. And I would like to invite you to start with a fixed time block of 10 hours a week. Maybe it'll grow to 15 or 20 hours a week of time blocking one day, but you're never going to have 40 hours a week of time block because you have to get caught up in the drift. The drift to me means, oh, I had a buyer I had to go see, I had a seller I had to go see, I had a transaction I had to follow up. So the drift is going to take up most of your time every week. But there is something holy, there's something genuinely holy about you protecting time. And what it says is, this time is more important to me and my family. This time is set aside for something specific. And I do not bend. I do not alter that. Once I set aside a time block from 9 to 11 on Mondays for my geographic farm, once I set aside 2 hours for time blocking for my prospecting, I never concede that. I mean, unless one of my children are injured or something happens to my wife, there's no way that I'm going to change that. If the Pope comes to town, I'm not going to change my time block. Okay? It doesn't matter. Maybe the Pope's not a good example. If the Rolling Stones come to town, I'm not going to change my time block. Okay? And that is where the rubber meets the road. So fast forward, if you sold a $325,000 house within the confines of this time block, I mean, in the confines of this source of business chart, I hope this makes sense to you. You would actually get to fill in 2.5 of your 133s. So what we're doing is we're managing income, not managing units. So if you got lucky and you sold a 325 when you had only projected 133s, that's actually 2.5 units of your source of business chart. Do I make myself clear? If you closed a home in your farm area for $250,000, that's actually two 133s, isn't it? So that's almost two full units of your 133 projections. So that's $7,500 in income. So if your sister's brother's friend bought a condo from you for 150,000, that's just over one unit because your unit is defined as 133 at $4,000. So if you got 1 1/3 unit out of that, or 1 1/10 unit, that you articulate that by highlighting that source of business. Guys, I hope that source of business charting will be a part of your life for the rest of your real estate career because it is a magnificent, useful tool to manage your expectations. Now, I'm not telling you to stick 133 in there, okay? Your job is to find out for this week's assignment what has been your average sale and how can you select from a larger group of sources. So we are going to send you out a source of business analysis. You're going to pick from those sources and you're going to build a source of business chart. And I can promise you this, as God is my witness, you will not go on to week 5 if we don't receive your source of business chart. So when you finish today, you're going to be asked a few questions on a follow-up sheet, and then you're going to be given a email address, coaching at anniemacworks.com. And you have to send the source of business chart that you create this week to coaching at source of business. I'm sorry, my bad. Coaching at anniemacworks.com. If we don't receive your source of business chart, you will not be permitted to go on to week 5 or 6, which is the nuts and bolts of listing presentation and buyer seller side follow-up. So we're going to be sharing with you the bulletproof listing presentation, the digital marketing strategy, CRM work, and closing techniques. And you can't get to week 5 if you don't complete a source of business chart for week 4. So good luck to you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Send us an email, ask us a question. We'll provide you that support. Megan and I are always standing by to support you. But please, please, please take the time once and for all to create a business plan and source of business chart for yourself, and you will be glad